Hi, I'm Lee Ehrenberg, and I'd like to welcome you to another event of The Living Room. The following program was recorded at the Santa Monica Public Library and is brought to you in collaboration between the library, the Friends of the Library, CityTV, and the California State Library. Now sit back and enjoy.
Thanks so much for coming out today on this Saturday afternoon for a little bit of music and some discussion about the composers, where they're from, who they were, and more importantly, what their inspiration was for their great music. I thought we'd start today with some Debussy, Claude Debussy, a French composer who lived from the mid-19th century to the early 20th century. You'll probably recognize that time as being the Impressionist time. However, Debussy did not like that term at all. He was not into the Impressionist term. He didn't think it represented him at all. He liked the term symbolist. Regardless, the music of the time and the art of the time very much go hand in hand. If you look at the art, you'll see a lot of the strokes, not that I'm an art expert by any means, but if you look at the art, a lot of feathery strokes are used, and the outlines are rather blurred, because their intent was really not to tell a story per se, but to catch a fleeting moment. Debussy did the same thing. And he used a lot of floating chords that really just kind of evokes a feeling. And for me, I was born in a place where it rains 200 inches a year. That's a lot. And so I always hear rain. It may be the power of suggestion, but I really think this is rain. Tell me what you think. This is Arabesque number 1. Claude. Rain, anyone? Maybe? Okay. Which will lead us to our next composer, who Debussy actually had great admiration for, and that's Frédéric Chopin. Now, I actually play quite a few pieces from Chopin. He's actually one of the few composers who wrote almost primarily for the piano, which was very unusual. And I definitely feel an affinity for his music, so I'll play 2 back-to-back here and then 2 later on in the program. Actually, near the end of his life, Debussy was commissioned to produce an edition of Chopin, and he basically called it his labor of love. Now, Chopin, he was born to a Polish mother and a French father, and his life was fairly tumultuous. They say great genius many times comes from a turbulent experience, and whether or not that's true, his music certainly is great genius. There's no question about that. Now, he lived at the same time as Robert Schumann and Franz Liszt. And Schumann absolutely adored Chopin, thought he was a great genius, and often referred to his music as cannons surrounded by delicate flowers. And I think this Chopin nocturne that I'm about to play, this is the Nocturne in B-flat minor, really kind of demonstrates that. We have a lot of mystical running. He was very much a nationalist composer from his home, Warsaw, Poland. It was, you hear a lot of the folk music, just a little bit, running all the way through. And they're delicate little runnings, then you get the booming. And so you see exactly what Schumann meant. I'm going to play a waltz, a Chopin waltz, now. I told you that he was contemporaries of Schumann and Liszt. However, Chopin rather liked himself a little bit more than his contemporaries. In fact, he found Schumann, as wonderful as Schumann was, to be rather idiosyncratic, and poor Liszt was just plain vulgar. So, according to Chopin. Nevertheless, Chopin didn't always like his own work either. In fact, this waltz that I'm about to play, it's the waltz in B minor, he wrote when he was 19 years old, and he discarded it. He decided it was junk, threw it away, it was to be burned, put it in a file to be burned. Happily, someone saved it, and they published it after his death. This is Waltz in B minor. Good thing you kept that one. So we're moving on, totally different time period. We're going to jump to the Baroque, and with a composer by the name of Domenico Scarlatti. Now, Scarlatti was born in Italy. However, he spent the majority of his life in Portugal and Spain. And actually, he was born in great company. He was born in 1685, the same year as Bach and Handel. And he actually was good friends with Handel. They competed once, even, in harpsichord and organ. The judges determined in the harpsichord, it was a draw. In the organ, Handel had a slight edge. Surprise, surprise. I think he was okay with that. At any rate, he ended up, unlike other composers who, many were not recognized in their time, many were poverty-stricken, in fact, and not recognized until much later. Scarlatti was absolutely recognized in his time, and he held many high posts, particularly in royal households. He taught many royal students. In fact, that's how he happened to go to Portugal. He was teaching the Princess of Portugal, who later became the Queen of Spain. And when he went to Spain, he started writing the sonatas that I'm going to play right now. I'm playing one. It's of a volume, the second volume he actually published. And many believe this is an example of early Spanish classical music. He wrote this while he was there, very much, of course, influenced by the Spanish, the Moorish influences. And he wrote this particular volume for the Queen of Spain in 1742. Oh, one thing you'll notice. Obviously, their instruments didn't have volume as we have today. They couldn't produce the volume, the soft that we have today. So instead, to produce dramatic moments, he used a lot of pauses and hand crossings, as you will see. That was, yeah, I wasn't kidding. It's a lot of that. I actually forgot to mention something that's kind of interesting. He's known for the repeated mordent in the beginning of the second section, and he called it the vamp. He always started the second one like that. I'm sure it wasn't maybe quite the vamp we think of today, but it has a similar. So now we're going to jump from the oldest to the most recent, to George Gershwin. Many of you will know him well. He sadly died way too young, as many of the composers did. In fact, the one who lived the longest was Scarlatti, from way back in the 1600s. So I guess medicine's getting worse. Over the years, I have no idea how that happened. But anyway, George Gershwin, of course, was born in New York in 1898. And he just loved music right from the start, such a lover of music, not so much a lover of school. So he decided to drop out when he was 15, and he went down to Tin Pan Lane, where they would plug songs, and he was a song plugger. And they would, because in the day you didn't go buy CDs, right? You went down and you bought sheet music, and you went home and played it. So they would set up a piano, and he'd sit there and bang out the tunes of the day, and people would come in and purchase it. Well, obviously he went on to great fame and great wealth. But in his heart, he always wanted to play classical music. And so he eventually went to Europe, and where he met up with Maurice Ravel, the great Maurice Ravel, who knew him well, actually. And when he got there, he said, "Oh, please teach me, you know, I want to learn classical music." And Ravel said, "Why in the world would you want to be a second-rate Ravel when you're a first-rate Gershwin?" He was very concerned that the arduous classical techniques and study that's required would really diminish the fantastic jazz feel that he had. And in fact, he said to him, he said, "You know, Gershwin, how much do you make exactly?" And Gershwin told him, and he said, "You know what, I think I need to be taking lessons from you." So anyway, it is true. He wrote, obviously, as we know, many great classical works with that jazz feel that is so Gershwin, and it's a great thing that he continued that. This particular prelude I'm about to play is prelude number 2. And when he passed away in 1937 in Hollywood, they orchestrated this particular prelude and played it at the Hollywood Bowl in his honor. to play. I forgot to mention before, I get so excited to play him. You get to do a little jazz, finally, it's kind of fun. You hear New York in there. It's just, so he loved to run around New York and just be in all the different places, and I don't know if you noticed, but this was the red light district. Just kind of juicy. All right, moving on to a totally different composer, although quite a maverick himself and a rock star, as I tell my students. You know him by his middle name, Amadeus. I don't have to say more. Yes, Mozart. So great. There's really not much that needs to be said about him. As I said, I always tell my students, you know, whoever's on your iPod, do you really think he's going to be playing in 300 years? I don't think so. Come on now. Mozart will always be cool. And there's just something amazing about him. I mean, his music, he was a genius, everybody knows. But I'm sure as child psychologists today would probably have a field day with that situation, as his father, of course, was a good musician, but when Mozart came along, there was no question he was this great genius. And his father, you know, had his best interest at heart, I'm sure, and paraded him around, look, isn't he wonderful? He was told his whole life how special, how fabulous, how wonderful he is. And his first biographer in 1793 said he became a man very early on. He matured to a man very early in his art, but he remained a child for the rest of his life. And to what you'd owe that to, it's hard to say. But in the course of time, we'd like to have a healthy self-esteem. He really liked himself a lot and didn't really like anybody else. And that didn't earn him a whole lot of friends. In fact, he had a lot of enemies. He had a hard time keeping positions, and so he died very young. Again, another died young in poverty. Nevertheless, we're blessed with his music. This is Fantasy number 3. circle back to the Chopin that I promised. The Chopin, the last two. Chopin wasn't keen on Schumann or Liszt, unfortunately, but he really did like Mozart. And he particularly liked Mozart's style of playing, with a very fixed left-hand chords and a running right hand. He was really keen on that. He thought it was an excellent recipe, if you will, and he used it quite a bit in his music. Chopin, my apologies. Chopin also liked to create worlds for himself, and I have to wonder if perhaps it wasn't because his life was so turbulent and difficult. He suffered, sickness and war and a heartbreak. All great ingredients for a great genius. But because of this, he liked to create worlds of poetry and motion, of color. And I believe, this is personal only, that worlds that were free of all those things that plagued him in real life. And this is one of those worlds here. This is the Chopin Waltz in C-sharp minor. I always go to a different place every time I hear it. kind of mystical at the end. It just feels very like you're going to another place. I like the world he created. Those are fun. Anyway, now the last piece is another one meant to be burned. Didn't want it, no good, but I thought it was pretty cool. This is the waltz, another waltz, surprisingly to me, very different from this. This was a classic waltz, almost the precursor to the Umpapa band, right? Dum, dum, bum, 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 in the left hand. This one, not so much. It's definitely a departure, and I really liked it because it was so different. I think probably the last thing I want to say about Chopin, I've told you quite a bit, but there are just kind of a few little fun things about him that I didn't know and I thought were really interesting. He was described as a very prudish person, very prudish, very reserved, on the nicer side, elegant, if you will, very prideful. He actually was well known and wealthy in his time, and so he had a lot of posts. He obviously wrote a lot, and he taught very wealthy people. However, Chopin couldn't stomach the concept of a business transaction, if you will. He couldn't stomach someone giving him money. So at the conclusion of a lesson, he would turn to the window, at which point the student knew that he or she was to then place the money, miraculously, on the pedestal and exit quickly. And then Chopin would turn around, oh, my, right? So he couldn't stand the thought. And he just had his things, and that's fine. Everybody has theirs. One last thing about him. He did spend the rest of his life, short life, again, in France. And his body is buried in France, and do you know that his heart is buried in Poland? All right. Without further ado.
following program was recorded at the Santa Monica Public Library and is brought to you in collaboration between the library, the Friends of the Library, CityTV, and the California State Library. That's a wrap on another episode of Cool People, Places, and Things here on the West Side. For CityTV, this is Lee Ehrenberg. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Great job, Lee.
Is that okay? We got it? Okay, guys.
One,
All right, thanks. See ya.
Hey, where are you going?
I got some personal business to take care of. Come on, guys. Stop rolling, okay? I agreed to do a reality show about hotspots in Santa Monica, but I can't let you follow me to my living room.
Lee, it's a library. What's the big secret?
The big secret is that at Santa Monica Public Library, what you see is not just what's on the shelves. All right, it's against my better judgment, but let's, as they say here at the old biblioteca, let's check it out.
Wow.
I told you.
This place is incredible.
Isn't it? Yeah, it's got a super high green rating. It's Wi-Fi throughout. So the space actually feels alive, like a living room.
Hey, Lee!
Hey, what's going on, guys? How
Back
are you?
again.
Yeah, I'm always here, dude, huh?
Oh, did you get our tweet?
Yeah, is it 3 o'clock?
3 o'clock in the auditorium.
All right, dude, I'm gonna see you there, okay?
All right.
Later, later,
Bye.
bye.
Friends of yours?
No, those are librarians.
No way.
Yeah, they're all super cool. I even friended them on Facebook and I follow them on Twitter. That's how I know one of my favorite authors is speaking at 3 o'clock today in the auditorium. Hey, you wanna grab a coffee and check it out?
Coffee?
Right this way, Miss First Time at the Library.
Oh,
It's a good latte, right?
that's my line. Can I at least have two
oh.
words?
I'm sorry, what, are you criticizing the writer?
No,
I
but
don't
I mean,
think
you
you're
had a
lucky to be in
paragraph.
this if you weren't good looking. Seriously. Heather, we put a lid on these. We can go inside, we can check out the latest CDs, DVDs, bestsellers. Cool.
That's great for you, but I don't live here. I live in the South Bay.
Do you got a California driver's license or a photo ID?
That's it?
That's all you need for a library card.
I'm out of here.
What? Where are you going?
Get my library card. Dwayne, let's go.
Are you going too? Ah, great. There goes the neighborhood. Hey guys, welcome to the It's Cool to Be Smart Club. Why don't you join the happening at Santa Monica Public Library, where the brains meet the beach at 6th and Santa Monica. Check us out today.